Welcome, the anointed ones. The greatest enemy of truth is not the lie, it's the person who believes it. Here's the unsettling fact. Most people would rather cling to a comfortable lie than confront an uncomfortable truth. But when you step into the room, raw, real, and undeniably authentic, you become a glitch in their system of deception. Suddenly, their carefully crafted stories start falling apart. And guess who they blame? You. It's almost funny if it weren't so predictable. The moment they can't control your narrative, they slap on labels. Crazy, arrogant, dangerous. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence alone exposes the cracks in their carefully curated facade. And trust me, nothing frustrates a liar more than running out of people who believe them. But here's where it gets interesting. Their lies can't keep up with the truth you carry. No matter how loudly they shout, how cleverly they twist the story, or how many people they recruit, the truth has a way of lingering, quiet, steady, and impossible to erase. So, why do they target you? Simple. You're the reminder they can't escape. Now let's break down exactly why they see you as a threat, and why their attempts to paint you as the villain are destined to backfire. Number 1. Your existence dismantles illusions. People build their lives around stories about who they are, what they deserve, and how the world works. The problem is, most of those stories are half-truths, stitched together to avoid facing their own flaws and failures. So, when you show up unapologetically yourself, refusing to play by the rules, they feel exposed. Not because you're attacking them, but because your existence alone challenges the lies they've told themselves. It's unsettling to see someone living with the freedom they secretly crave. While they hide behind excuses, you prove that change is possible. While they settle for less, you show that more is within reach. And while they conform to fit in, you stand out without trying. That kind of authenticity doesn't just turn heads, it shakes foundations. Suddenly, their carefully constructed image feels hollow, and instead of questioning their choices, it's easier to question you. You become the problem, the troublemaker, the one who thinks they're better than everyone else. But that's never the real issue. The issue is that your presence forces them to confront the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be. Your confidence highlights their insecurities. Your honesty exposes their denial. Your success reminds them of the dreams they abandoned. So they talk. They twist the story, casting you as the villain to make themselves the victim. They nitpick your flaws, magnify your mistakes, and spread half-truths designed to turn others against you. But notice something. They never confront you directly, because deep down they know the truth won't bend to fit their narrative. The irony, the more they try to tear you down, the more they reveal their own cracks. Lies need constant maintenance, but the truth stands on its own. And no matter how much noise they make, your presence remains a silent reminder of what's possible when someone refuses to live a lie. Number 2. Projection is their last defense. When people can't control how you see yourself, they try to control how others see you. It's a defense mechanism, a way to avoid dealing with the fact that your presence forces them to confront parts of themselves they'd rather ignore. The easiest way to do that: make you the problem, label you, twist your actions, turn your confidence into arrogance, your strength into intimidation, and your honesty into cruelty. It's not about who you are, it's about who they need you to be to feel comfortable in their own skin. Projection works like a mirror flipped backward. They take the things they fear or dislike about themselves, their insecurity, dishonesty, or jealousy, and assign those traits to you. If they can convince others that you're unstable or malicious, they don't have to face the fact that those qualities live within them. And the more you refuse to engage in their games, the more desperate they become. After all, nothing frustrates a manipulator more than someone who won't play along. This is why the attacks feel so personal. They're not just reacting to what you say or do, they're reacting to what you represent. Your presence reminds them of their unfulfilled potential, their hidden shame, and the lies they tell themselves to get through the day. Instead of acknowledging that discomfort, they lash out, hoping to shift the focus onto you. If they can make others believe you're the problem, they can avoid looking in the mirror a little longer. But here's the catch. Projection is like a mask. It only works as long as people believe the illusion. The moment someone sees through it, the whole act falls apart. And the more they try to paint you as something you're not, the more obvious their own insecurities become. In the end, their need to tear you down says more about them than it ever could about you. They're not attacking who you are, they're running from who they are. Number 3. They're not attacking you, they're escaping themselves. When people attack you, it's easy to think it's about something you said or did. But the truth runs deeper. They're not reacting to you, they're reacting to what you make them feel. You hold up a mirror they can't avoid, reflecting the parts of themselves they've buried under excuses and denial. Your confidence highlights their insecurities. Your honesty exposes their half-truths. Your strength reminds them of every time they gave up. It's not about your actions, it's about their unresolved battles. This is why their reactions seem over the top. A small disagreement turns into a character assassination. A simple success on your part feels like a personal attack on theirs. It's not rational because it's not about logic, it's about emotion. They see in you everything they wish they could be, and instead of using that as inspiration, they lash out. Why? Because tearing you down is easier than building themselves up. The irony is, the things they criticize most are often the things they secretly admire. They call you too confident because they wish they had your courage. They say you're too intense because they lack your passion. They accuse you of thinking you're better than everyone because deep down they fear they're not good enough. Every insult is a confession wrapped in projection. But here's where it gets interesting. They need you more than they realize. Without you as a scapegoat, they'd have to confront their own shortcomings. By making you the villain, they get to avoid that uncomfortable truth. It's a twisted form of self-preservation, but it's also a trap, because no matter how much they blame you, their inner conflict doesn't go away. And the more they try to silence you, the louder their own insecurities become. In the end, their attacks say more about their pain than your worth. They're not fighting you. They're running from themselves. But no matter how fast they run, the mirror you hold up will always be there, waiting. Number 4. Silence terrifies them more than words. Silence is powerful because it leaves people alone with their own thoughts. For those who thrive on manipulation and control, this is terrifying. They rely on your reactions, your anger, your defense, your need to explain yourself, because it keeps the focus on you and not on them. The moment you stop engaging, the game changes. Suddenly they're left with nothing but their own insecurities echoing back at them. This is why your silence unsettles them more than any argument ever could. Words can be twisted, misinterpreted, and used against you, but silence is undeniable. It forces them to sit with the truth they've been trying to avoid. Without your response to fuel their narrative, they're left exposed, facing the very feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or jealousy they've been projecting onto you. Notice how their attacks escalate when you refuse to react. They push harder, trying to provoke you because your composure threatens the illusion of power they've built. They need your validation, even if it's through conflict, because it confirms their ability to control the situation. When you refuse to play along, their sense of control slips through their fingers, and that scares them. Not because of what you're doing, but because of what your silence reveals about them. Your refusal to validate their drama strips away the noise they use to drown out their own inner chaos. It's like pulling the curtain back on a stage with no script. Without your reaction, they have nothing to feed their narrative, and their lies start to collapse under their own weight. They can shout as loud as they want, but your silence stands as a reminder that their words hold no power over you. In the end, it's not just the absence of your words that unsettles them. It's what your silence represents: strength, self-control, and the refusal to be manipulated. While they spiral, searching for ways to regain control, you stand grounded and untouchable. And that's a truth they can't escape, no matter how loudly they try to drown it out. Number 5. Your presence disrupts their illusion of power. Control is a game of smoke and mirrors, and manipulators rely on others to keep their illusions alive. They build their power through half-truths, twisted narratives, and carefully crafted personas. But here's the catch. Their power only works if people believe the act. The moment you step outside their game, their entire illusion starts to fall apart. Your presence is disruptive because you refuse to play by their rules. You don't engage in their gossip, you don't bend to their manipulation, and you don't shrink yourself to make them feel bigger. This throws them off balance because their lies depend on your reaction. They need you to defend yourself so they can twist your words. They need you to argue so they can play the victim. When you refuse to respond, they lose control of the narrative. What really unsettles them is that they can't predict you. They're used to people reacting a certain way, getting defensive, explaining themselves, or trying to please them. But when you remain calm, unbothered, and grounded in your truth, they have no script for that. Their usual tricks don't work, and it leaves them scrambling to maintain the facade. The more they try to twist the story, the more obvious their desperation becomes. Your presence alone is a threat because it reveals what they're trying to hide. Their confidence cracks when you show up without fear. Their authority wavers when you refuse to submit. And their lies start to unravel the moment people see that you don't fit the villain role they've tried to assign you. Without your participation, their deception can't stand on its own. It collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. In the end, they're not fighting to defeat you. They're fighting to maintain control over the people around them. But as their lies fall apart, others begin to see the truth. And the more they struggle to keep the illusion alive, the more they reveal who they really are. Your presence doesn't just disrupt their game, it ends it. Number 5. They weaponize your authenticity. Authenticity is a rare currency in a world built on appearances. Most people wear masks, carefully crafted personas designed to fit in, gain approval, or avoid judgment. When you show up as your true self, unfiltered and unapologetic, you expose the contrast between who they pretend to be and who they really are. And that's where the problem begins. Your realness forces them to confront their own artificiality. The confidence they pretend to have, you embody naturally. The freedom they claim to seek, you live every day. While they adjust their masks to match the crowd, you stand firm in your identity. This challenges the entire system they've built their lives around. One where success is measured by how well you conform, not how boldly you stand apart. Instead of facing the discomfort of their own inauthenticity, they choose the easier route, labeling you as the problem. They twist your strengths into weaknesses. Your honesty becomes harsh. Your passion becomes too much. Your independence becomes selfish. They frame your willingness to speak the truth as arrogance because it highlights the lies they tell themselves. It's not that you're unstable. It's that your presence shakes the foundation of their carefully constructed world. And for those who rely on those masks for acceptance, that's a threat they can't ignore. This is why their attacks often feel so personal. They're not critiquing your behavior. They're reacting to what your authenticity represents, a reminder that it's possible to live without constant validation, to stand tall without needing approval. But instead of using that as inspiration, they weaponize it, hoping that by labeling you as unstable or difficult, they can shift the focus away from their own insecurities. Yet their words reveal more about them than they do about you. Authenticity doesn't need validation, and realness doesn't crumble under criticism. While they cling to their masks, fearing what others might think, you move through life untethered. Proof that freedom comes not from fitting in, but from having the courage to be exactly who you are. Number 7. Truth has a frequency they can't tolerate. Truth isn't just something you speak, it's something you are. It radiates from you, like a frequency that people can feel before you ever say a word. Most glide through life tuned to a lower frequency, a space where deception, half-truths, and hidden motives feel normal. But when you walk in, that frequency shifts. Suddenly the masks slip, the lies feel heavier, the room gets quieter. Not because you're exposing anyone outright, but because your presence disrupts the equilibrium they've built around their falsehoods. This is why their reaction feels so visceral. It's not just annoyance, it's agitation, discomfort, even anger. They can't quite name what's wrong, but they feel it. Their usual tactics, manipulation, guilt-tripping, or bending the truth, don't work as smoothly around you. Something about your presence seems to amplify what they're trying to hide. Their motives feel more obvious, their words sound more hollow, and without realizing why, they start to feel vulnerable, exposed in ways they can't explain, so they lash out. Not because you've accused them of anything, but because your energy alone makes them confront what they'd rather ignore. Their aggression isn't about you. It's about their inability to control how they feel in your presence. You force them to reckon with the parts of themselves they've buried, the insecurities, the lies they've told, the personas they've crafted to fit in. It's like holding up a mirror that reflects not their carefully curated image, but their unfiltered reality. They may try to dismiss you, belittle you, or label you as too intense or too much. But the truth you carry doesn't need their approval. It doesn't shrink in the face of criticism or fade when ignored. And the more they try to silence it, the louder it resonates. Not because you're shouting, but because truth has a weight they can't escape. No matter how fiercely they resist, your frequency keeps vibrating, steady, undeniable, and impossible to control. Number 8. You're the plot twist they never saw coming. People who thrive on control love predictable characters, people who react the way they expect, who fall into the roles they've assigned. You were supposed to play the victim, the one who stays silent when attacked, who breaks under pressure, who seeks their approval just to find peace. They wrote that script with confidence, expecting you to follow every line. But then you did the unthinkable. You tore up the script. Your refusal to conform is the plot twist they never anticipated. When they pushed, you didn't break. You stood taller. When they lied, you didn't scramble to defend yourself. You let the truth speak for itself. And when they tried to isolate you, you thrived on your own. This wasn't supposed to happen. Their entire narrative depended on you playing the part they needed. Without your compliance, the story doesn't work. Now they're left scrambling to rewrite the plot. They twist events, exaggerate your actions, and invent new reasons why you're the problem. But the harder they try, the more obvious their desperation becomes. People start to notice the inconsistencies, the way their stories shift, the way their accusations don't quite add up. And while they're busy trying to control the narrative, you're outliving the truth, proving with every step forward that their version of events was never real. What frustrates them most is that you've taken away their power. They relied on your fear, your guilt, and your need to explain yourself. But when you stopped playing by their rules, they lost control of the game. Their insults no longer land, their manipulation no longer works, and their attempts to make you the villain only expose their own insecurities. This isn't the story they wanted. They wanted a cautionary tale, proof that anyone who stands up to them will fail. Instead, they got a lesson they never wanted to learn, that some people refuse to live inside someone else's fiction. And no matter how many times they rewrite the script, they can't change the fact that you've already stepped outside their narrative and you're never going back. Number 9. They mistake your solitude for weakness. Solitude is a language most people can't speak. In a world where validation is currency, standing alone is often seen as a flaw. So when you choose solitude over shallow connections, they label it as loneliness. They assume that without their approval, you must feel lost. But they misunderstand the difference between isolation and independence. Your solitude isn't a cage. It's a fortress. It's where you sharpen your mind, strengthen your spirit, and learn to rely on no one but yourself. This terrifies them. Why? Because their power depends on your need for acceptance. Manipulators thrive when their approval feels like oxygen, something you can't live without. But when you show that you can breathe just fine on your own, their control slips away. Your ability to stand alone makes you unpredictable. You're not swayed by gossip or guilt trips. You don't crave their validation or fear their rejection, and that makes you untouchable. Notice how they react when you pull back. They try to frame your solitude as weakness. They're distant, they're cold, they can't keep friends. But their words are projections of their own fear. Deep down, they know they couldn't survive without the constant feedback loop of approval and attention. Their social circles aren't built on genuine connection. They're built on mutual validation. Take that away and they're left with the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. So they attempt to alienate you, hoping that isolation will break you. But their strategy backfires. The more they push you away, the more you thrive without them. Instead of falling apart, you grow stronger, more focused, more at peace. And that strength is impossible to ignore. Others begin to see the difference, the confidence that comes from self-reliance, the clarity that comes from silence, and the freedom that comes from not needing to please anyone. In the end, they don't fear your solitude because it makes you lonely. They fear it because it proves that they need the crowd, while you've learned to stand alone. And nothing threatens a false sense of power more than someone who doesn't need it to begin with. Number 10. Manipulation fails because you see beyond the mask. Manipulation only works when it goes unnoticed. The entire game relies on misdirection, getting you to doubt yourself, question your reality, and react in ways that serve their agenda. But when you see through the mask, the game is over before it even begins. Every calculated word, every guilt trip, every attempt to twist the narrative loses its power the moment you recognize it for what it is. And that realization frustrates them more than anything. What makes you different is your ability to perceive what lies beneath the surface. You read between the lines, catching the subtle shifts in tone, the contradictions in their stories, and the unspoken motives behind their actions. They might smile to your face, but you sense the envy hidden beneath their praise. They might offer advice, but you recognize the manipulation woven into their concern. You see the patterns others miss, the cyclical nature of their behavior, the way they play the victim when confronted, and the way their kindness always comes with strings attached. This awareness makes you immune to their tactics. When they try to provoke you, you stay calm. When they try to guilt you, you refuse to carry burdens that aren't yours. And when they try to control you through fear or obligation, you see their desperation, not your weakness. This unnerves them because manipulation requires an emotional reaction to succeed. Without your fear, anger, or confusion to fuel their control, their words fall flat. Their frustration shows in the way they escalate their behavior. They push harder, testing your boundaries, hoping to provoke the reaction they need to regain control. But the more they try, the more obvious their intentions become. You no longer question yourself, you question them. And that shift in power is something they can't stand. The truth is, manipulators thrive in the shadows of doubt and confusion. But once you see their mask for what it is, a tool of control, not truth, they lose the ability to influence you. And no matter how clever they think they are, they can't outsmart someone who's already read the script. Number 11. They rely on collective delusion. Manipulators don't operate in isolation. They need an audience. Their power comes from creating a collective delusion where their lies are accepted as truth. Alone, their words carry little weight. But when others believe their narrative, it solidifies their control and protects them from accountability. This is why they work so hard to sway public opinion, turning friends into allies, planting seeds of doubt and twisting events until their version becomes the accepted reality. Their influence thrives on numbers, not facts. But here's the flaw in their strategy. The entire system collapses the moment people start to see the truth. Manipulation relies on illusion, on creating a version of you that others fear, pity, or despise. Yet no matter how convincingly they spin the story, they can't erase the evidence of your existence. Your actions, your integrity, and the consistency of your character stand as living proof that their words don't match reality. And the more people interact with you, the harder it becomes to maintain the lie. This is why your presence is so threatening. You don't have to argue or defend yourself. Simply being who you are is enough to expose the cracks in their narrative. People start to notice the contradictions. If you're as unstable or dangerous as they claim, why do you move through life with such calm confidence? If you're the villain, why do your actions consistently reflect strength, compassion, and honesty? Each encounter with you chips away at the illusion they've built, forcing people to question what they've been told. And this terrifies them. The moment doubt enters the minds of their audience, their power begins to crumble. Manipulation only works when it goes unchallenged. Once people see through the facade, there's no going back. The lies lose their grip, and the manipulator is left exposed, no longer the master of the narrative, but a character in a story that no one believes. Your role in this isn't to convince anyone of the truth. That's their journey to take. Your role is simply to live in a way that makes the truth undeniable. Because when facts stand side by side with fiction, the truth doesn't need to shout. It simply stands tall, unshaken, and undeniable. Number 12. Your calmness is their chaos. Manipulators thrive on chaos. Their power lies in stirring emotions, provoking fear, guilt, anger, or doubt until you're too overwhelmed to think clearly. When you're caught in that emotional whirlwind, they can steer your decisions, shape your perceptions, and keep you dependent on their approval. But the moment you respond with calm certainty, their entire strategy falls apart. Calmness is their kryptonite because it leaves them with nothing to manipulate. They push your buttons, expecting you to lash out or break down, anything that proves they still control the narrative. But when you refuse to react, their power slips through their fingers. Suddenly their insults sound hollow, their accusations fall flat. Without your emotional response to fuel their game, they're left grasping at straws. This is why they escalate when you remain calm. They raise their voice, hurl harsher words, or twist the story even further, anything to trigger a reaction. But no matter how loud they get, your composure acts like a mirror, reflecting their chaos back at them. And the more they scramble to regain control, the more obvious their desperation becomes. Your calmness also exposes a deeper truth, that their power was never real. It only existed because you once believed their words could define you. But now you see through the illusion. You know their opinions have no bearing on your worth. Their attempts to control your emotions no longer touch you because you've taken ownership of your inner peace. And nothing unsettles a manipulator more than someone who no longer needs their approval. In the end, it's not just your calmness that disrupts their world. It's what your calmness represents. Strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance, and clarity without chaos. While they spiral, grasping for control, you stand grounded, unmoved, and untouchable. And that's a power they can't take away, no matter how hard they try. Number 13. They fear the ripple effect of your truth. Manipulators don't fear being exposed. They fear what happens after they're exposed. Their power isn't built on isolated lies, it's built on systems of control that keep entire groups of people in line. They create environments where questioning their authority feels dangerous, and where speaking the truth comes with consequences. As long as everyone plays their part, the illusion holds. But the moment one person steps out of line and refuses to stay silent, the entire system begins to shake. That's why your presence is more dangerous than they let on. It's not just about your refusal to believe their lies, it's about the ripple effect your truth creates. When you stand firm in your authenticity, others start to wonder if they can do the same. Your strength plants seeds of doubt in those who once accepted manipulation as normal. People begin to question the narratives they've been fed, the roles they've been forced to play, and the authority they've been taught to obey. One spark of truth is enough to ignite a chain reaction that spreads far beyond what the manipulator can control. This ripple effect terrifies them because their entire strategy relies on isolation and fear. They need people to feel alone in their doubts, afraid to speak up and unsure if anyone will believe them. But when you break that silence, you prove that the fear was a lie. Your courage becomes proof that it's possible to stand up, to walk away, and to live freely without their approval. And as others witness your strength, they begin to see possibilities they never considered before. The manipulator's worst nightmare isn't losing control of you, it's losing control of everyone. Once the illusion cracks, people start seeing through their tactics faster. The guilt trips stop working. The fear loses its grip, and the authority they once wielded begins to crumble. This is why they attack you so fiercely. They're not just trying to silence you, they're trying to prevent anyone else from hearing the truth. But the ripple effect has already begun. With every lie you expose, with every boundary you enforce, and with every step you take toward freedom, you show others that the system is only as strong as the fear that holds it together. And once that fear is gone, the whole structure collapses, leaving the manipulator with no one left to control. Number 14. Your resilience is their greatest defeat. Resilience is a language manipulators can't understand. Their entire strategy hinges on the belief that pressure will break you, that if they push hard enough, you'll crumble, conform, or disappear altogether. They rely on setbacks to weaken your resolve, on criticism to shake your confidence, and on rejection to make you doubt your worth. But every time you rise from what was meant to destroy you, you deliver a blow they never saw coming. Each attempt to break you becomes fuel for your growth. Their lies force you to sharpen your discernment. Their betrayals teach you the importance of boundaries. Their attempts to control you push you to reclaim your power. Instead of weakening you, their actions become the very tools that shape your strength. And this is where their defeat begins, not in a single moment of confrontation, but in the slow, undeniable realization that nothing they do can stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. What unsettles them most is that your resilience exposes the limits of their control. Manipulators thrive on predictable reactions: anger, fear, self-doubt. But when you respond with strength and clarity, their tactics fall flat. Every insult that doesn't break you, every obstacle you overcome, and every lie you outlast chips away at their illusion of power. They watch as the very situations they engineered to destroy you become stepping stones to your success. And your success is what haunts them, not just because it proves them wrong, but because it highlights their own failure. They see in you what they can't achieve themselves: courage without cruelty, strength without control, and confidence that doesn't depend on tearing others down. Your ability to thrive despite their best efforts forces them to confront a truth they've spent their lives avoiding: that their power was never real. It only existed as long as you believed in it. In the end, your resilience isn't just your victory, it's their defeat. Because no matter how many times they tried to break you, the final chapter of the story isn't about what they did to you. It's about what you became because of it. And that's a truth they can never rewrite. In the end, the battle was never about their lies. It was about your refusal to live beneath them. Every tactic they used, every manipulation they tried, was designed to make you question your strength, your sanity, and your worth. But they underestimated you. They mistook your silence for weakness, your solitude for loneliness, and your calmness for vulnerability. What they couldn't see until it was too late was that every attempt to break you only refined you. Their greatest fear wasn't that you'd expose them with words, it was that you'd prove them wrong with your existence. By standing firm in your truth, you shattered the illusions they built to control you. You didn't need to convince anyone. Your life became the evidence that their narrative could no longer hold. And with every step you took forward, the ripple effect of your resilience spread further, weakening the foundation of their control. They tried to cast you as the victim, but you rewrote the script. They counted on your reaction, but you responded with clarity. They expected your downfall, but instead, you thrived. And in doing so, you did more than escape their grasp. You exposed the limits of their power. Because their influence was never built on strength, it was built on fear, deception, and the silence of those who doubted their own worth. But you are proof that their control ends the moment you stop believing in it. Your presence, your resilience, and your unwavering authenticity are reminders that no lie can stand against the truth. No manipulation can break a spirit that refuses to bend. And no one, no matter how hard they try, can rewrite the story of someone who has learned to hold the pen. So let them call you the plot twist, the disruption, the threat. Let them scramble to rewrite their narrative. In the end, it doesn't matter, because the story they feared most is the one you're living right now. The story of someone who saw through the mask, broke free from the script, and proved beyond any doubt that their greatest weapon was never enough to stop you. If this message resonated with you, if you've ever felt the weight of someone else's lies or the pressure of their control, then know this: your truth matters, and your resilience is rewriting the story. If you found value in this video, don't keep it to yourself. Help others break free from the noise. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected with more content that empowers and enlightens. Give this video a thumbs up to show your support, and drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or the moment you realized their control no longer defined you. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose world might change with the right words at the right time. Together, we can be the ripple effect that breaks the cycle. Until next time, stay grounded, stay strong, and never let anyone rewrite your story.